goes horribly, catastrophically wrong. In just 33 seconds, one comment would shatter the entire interview and lead to the most shocking exit in talk show history. Andy Cohen sat across from Meghan Markle in his signature Bravo clubhouse, the studio lights gleaming off the marble bar between them. The audience buzzed with excitement. This was supposed to be a light-hearted conversation, a chance for Meghan to promote her latest venture and share some laughs. But from the moment she walked onto the set, something felt different. Something felt off. Andy started with his usual charm, flashing that megawatt smile that had made him a household name. Meghan, welcome to Watch What Happens Live. We are so thrilled to have you here tonight. Meghan settled into her seat, adjusting her designer dress with a practiced motion. Thank you for having me, Andy. Though I must say, I expected a bit more grandeur for someone of my stature. The audience went quiet. You could hear the collective intake of breath. Andy's smile flickered for just a moment, but he recovered quickly. He was a professional, after all. 20 years in the business had taught him how to handle difficult guests. Well, we like to keep things intimate here, Andy said, his voice still warm. It makes for better conversation. So tell us, what have you been up to lately? Meghan leaned back, crossing her legs with deliberate slowness. I've been working on several projects that are really going to change the conversation around representation and authenticity. Things that matter. Real things. Not just silly games and gossip. Andy's eyebrows raised slightly. His show was known for games and gossip. That was the whole point. But he pressed on, determined to keep things moving. That sounds wonderful. Can you tell us more about these projects? I could, Meghan said, examining her nails. But I'm not sure your audience would understand the complexity of what I'm trying to achieve. No offense. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Andy shifted in his seat, and you could see something change in his expression. The professional mask was still there, but underneath it, something was stirring. I think you might be surprised, Andy said, his voice a touch cooler now. Our audience is actually very smart and engaged. They care about important issues. Meghan laughed, but it wasn't a friendly sound. Do they? Because from what I've seen of your show, it's mostly about who's feuding with who and what people wore to parties. It's all very surface level. One of the producers in the back made a small gesture to Andy, but he waved them off. He was going to handle this himself. Meghan, I have to say, you seem to have some strong opinions about a show you agreed to appear on. Why did you come here tonight? My publicist thought it would be good exposure, Meghan said with a shrug. Though honestly, I'm starting to question that advice. I mean, do you even prepare for these interviews, Andy? Your questions are so basic. The audience gasped. Andy set down his drink, the ice cubes clinking against the glass with a sound that seemed too loud in the sudden silence. His jaw tightened, and when he spoke, his voice was measured and calm, but there was steel underneath it. I prepare extensively for every single guest who sits in that chair, Andy said. I've been doing this for 2 decades, and I take my job very seriously. I'm sorry if my questions aren't up to your standards, but I'm trying to have a conversation here, not conduct a dissertation defense. Meghan waved her hand dismissively. Oh, please, don't be so sensitive. I'm just being honest. Isn't that what you always say you want? Honesty? Truth? Well, the truth is that this whole setup is beneath me. The tacky decorations, the cheap bar, the pedestrian questions. I thought this would be different. Andy took a deep breath. The audience was completely silent now, watching this train wreck unfold in real time. Meghan, I'm going to give you a chance to reset here. We can start over, have a real conversation, but I need you to show some basic respect. For me, for my crew, and for this show that millions of people love. Respect? Meghan's voice went up an octave. You want to talk to me about respect? Do you know who I am? Do you know what I've been through? I don't have to sit here and be lectured by someone who makes a living off of other people's drama. Actually, Andy said, his voice quiet but firm, you do have to sit here. Because you signed a contract, and you agreed to do this interview. But if you can't be civil, if you can't have a normal conversation without insulting me and my work, then maybe we need to end this right now. Meghan stood up suddenly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. End it? You can't end this. I'm the guest. I'm the one people tuned in to see. Without me, you have nothing. Andy stood up too, and now he was angry. Really angry. You could see it in the set of his shoulders, in the way his hands gripped the edge of the bar. But his voice remained controlled. That's where you're wrong, Meghan. This show existed long before you walked through that door, and it'll exist long after you leave. We've had hundreds of incredible guests, people who understood that this is a conversation, not a coronation. How dare you speak to me that way, Meghan said, her voice shaking with rage. I am not some reality star desperate for attention. I am a duchess. I am a humanitarian. I am someone who actually matters in this world. The audience was completely stunned. Some people had their hands over their mouths. Others were recording on their phones, knowing they were witnessing something historic. Andy took a step back from the bar, and when he spoke, his voice was calm again. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes right before a storm. You know what, Meghan? I've had difficult guests before. I've had people who didn't want to be here. I've had people who were having bad days. But I've never, in all my years doing this, had someone sit in that chair and show such complete disregard for everyone around them. Oh, here we go, Meghan said, rolling her eyes. The victim act. Poor Andy Cohen, so mistreated by the terrible guest who dared to tell the truth. The truth? Andy's voice rose slightly. You want to talk about truth? The truth is that you came on my show. You insulted my set, my questions, my audience, and my entire career. And for what? Because you think you're too good for this? Then why are you here? Meghan pointed a finger at him, her face flushed with anger. I'm here because my team said it would be good for my image. But you know what? My image doesn't need this. I don't need you. This pathetic little show with its pathetic little host asking pathetic little questions about nothing that matters. The room went completely silent. Even the camera operators seemed to freeze. Andy stared at her for a long moment, and you could see him making a decision. He turned to the camera, his face composed, and spoke directly to the audience at home. We're going to take a quick break, he said, his voice professional and smooth. Then he turned back to Meghan, and his voice dropped to a level that only she and the studio audience could hear clearly. Get out. Excuse me? Meghan's eyes went wide. You heard me, Andy said. Get out of my studio. This interview is over. I've given you multiple chances to course correct, to show even a shred of basic human decency, and you've thrown it back in my face every single time. So we're done here. Security will show you out. Meghan laughed, a high, almost hysterical sound. You can't throw me out. I'm Meghan Markle. Do you know what kind of backlash you're going to face for this? Do you know how this is going to look? Andy crossed his arms. I know exactly how it's going to look. It's going to look like I stood up for myself and my team and refused to let someone treat us like garbage on our own show. And you know what? I'm completely fine with that. This is unbelievable, Meghan said, grabbing her purse from beside the chair. You're going to regret this, Andy. When my lawyers contact you, when the press gets hold of this, when everyone sees what you've done, you're going to wish you just sat there and taken it. Taken it? Andy's voice was incredulous now. Taken what, exactly? Your insults? Your condescension? Your complete lack of awareness about how you're acting? No, Meghan. I don't think I'm going to regret this at all. 2 security guards appeared at the edge of the set, standing at a respectful distance, but making their presence known. Meghan looked at them, then back at Andy, her face a mixture of shock and fury. You're actually serious, she said. You're actually kicking me off your show. I am, Andy said simply. And I want you to understand something. This isn't about ego. This isn't about power. This is about respect. You came into my house, and you disrespected everyone in it. The crew who set up your lighting just right. The producers who prepared your talking points. The audience members who took time out of their lives to be here. And me. You disrespected all of us, and I'm not going to stand for it. Meghan's mouth opened and closed, as if she couldn't quite believe what was happening. I've been on dozens of shows, hundreds of interviews. Nobody has ever treated me like this. Maybe they should have, Andy said quietly. Maybe if someone had set a boundary earlier, you wouldn't think it's okay to act this way. But that's not my problem to solve. My problem right now is getting you off my set so we can salvage what's left of this show. The audience was still silent, but you could feel the energy shifting. People were nodding. Some were even starting to smile. They were on Andy's side, and everyone in the room knew it. Meghan must have felt it too, because her expression changed. The anger was still there, but now there was something else. Uncertainty. Maybe even a flicker of embarrassment, though she'd never admit it. Fine, she said, her voice tight. I don't need this anyway. I have better things to do with my time than waste it on a bottom-tier talk show with a host who clearly doesn't understand quality when he sees it. Andy didn't rise to the bait. He just stood there, arms still crossed, waiting. The security guards took a small step forward, and Meghan shot them a withering look. I can see myself out, she snapped. She turned to leave, then paused and looked back at Andy one more time. You know what your problem is, Andy. You're jealous. Jealous that some people actually matter in this world while you're stuck here playing bartender and asking silly questions. For the first time since the confrontation began, Andy smiled. It wasn't a mean smile, but it wasn't friendly either. You know what, Meghan? If thinking that makes you feel better about what just happened here, you go right ahead and believe it. But we both know the truth. The truth is that you came on this show expecting to be worshipped. And when that didn't happen, when you were asked to just be a normal guest and have a normal conversation, you couldn't handle it. So you lashed out. And now you're leaving. Not because I'm jealous, but because you couldn't show basic respect to the people around you. Meghan's face went red. I've never been so insulted in my entire life. Really? Andy's eyebrows went up. Because you've spent the last 15 minutes insulting everyone in this room. But somehow, when someone finally stands up to you, suddenly you're the victim? That's not how this works, Meghan. That's not how any of this works. One of the producers stepped forward, whispering something in Andy's ear. He nodded, then looked back at Meghan. We need the set clear. So if you're going to leave, this is the time. Meghan stood there for another moment, as if waiting for Andy to back down, to apologize, to beg her to stay. But Andy just stood there, calm and resolute. The security guards moved a bit closer, and finally, Meghan turned on her heel. This isn't over, she said over her shoulder as she walked toward the exit. Actually, Andy called after her, it is. It's completely over. Have a good night, Meghan. She didn't respond. She just kept walking, her heels clicking sharply against the floor, until she disappeared through the studio door. The second she was gone, the entire room seemed to exhale collectively. The audience erupted into applause, standing and cheering for Andy, who stood there looking a bit stunned by the whole thing. He ran a hand through his hair and let out a long breath. Well, he said to the camera, a slight smile playing at his lips. That was something. I need a minute to figure out what we're doing for the rest of the show. The audience laughed, and someone shouted, You did the right thing, Andy. He looked out at them, and his smile grew wider. Thanks, I appreciate that. Because honestly, I was not expecting my night to go that way. I've had awkward interviews before, I've had tense moments, but I've never had to actually ask someone to leave the building." Another audience member called out, "She was so rude." Andy nodded. "She was. And look, I try to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. I know people have bad days. I know that interviews can be stressful. But there's a difference between being nervous or having an off day and just being, well, what you all just witnessed." He walked back to his seat and sat down, picking up his drink and taking a long sip. "You know what the wild thing is? We prepared for this interview like we prepare for every interview. We had great questions lined up. We had topics I genuinely thought would make for interesting conversation. But from the second she sat down, it was clear she didn't want to be here. And if you don't want to be somewhere, that's fine. But don't take it out on the people who are just trying to do their jobs." The audience applauded again, and Andy held up a hand. Okay, let me just say this. And then we're going to move on, because we still have a show to do. I've been in this business a long time. I've worked with all kinds of people. Celebrities, reality stars, politicians, authors, athletes. You name it, they've probably sat in that chair. And the vast majority of them, even the ones who might not have wanted to be here, they show up and they're professional. They're kind to the crew. They answer the questions. They engage. Because that's what you do. That's the basic social contract of doing an interview. He paused, collecting his thoughts. But every once in a while, you get someone who thinks the rules don't apply to them. Someone who thinks that because they've achieved a certain level of fame or status, they don't have to treat other people with respect. And that's where I draw the line. I don't care who you are or what you've done. If you come on my show, you treat my team with respect. You treat the audience with respect. And yeah, you treat me with respect too." The audience cheered, and Andy smiled. "All right, enough about that. Let's not give her any more of our time or energy. We have a whole show to get through, and I'm not going to let one difficult guest ruin our night. So, we're going to take a real break now, regroup, and when we come back, we're going to have some fun. Because that's what we do here. We have fun. And no amount of negativity from anyone is going to change that." As the show cut to commercial, Andy leaned back in his chair and shook his head. The audience was still buzzing, everyone talking at once about what they'd just seen. He could hear snippets of conversation floating up to him. "I can't believe she said that to him. Did you see his face when she called his questions basic? Good for Andy for standing up for himself. I feel bad for her publicist." Andy caught the eye of one of his producers, who gave him a thumbs up. He returned the gesture, then took another sip of his drink. His hand was shaking slightly. Adrenaline, he realized. The whole confrontation had lasted maybe 10 minutes, but it had felt like an hour. His heart was still racing. One of the camera operators approached him during the break. "That took guts, Andy. Not many hosts would have done that." Andy shrugged. "I didn't really have a choice. I mean, what was I supposed to do? Just sit there and let her insult everyone? That's not who I am. That's not what this show is about." The camera operator nodded. "Still, you handled it well. You kept your cool, you were firm but fair, and you gave her multiple chances to turn it around. She just didn't take them." "No," Andy agreed. "She didn't, and that's on her, not on me. I can live with that." As the commercial break wound down, Andy straightened in his chair and checked his appearance in the monitor. He looked a bit frazzled, which made sense given what had just happened, but he also looked determined, confident, like someone who had just stood up for himself and his team and had no regrets about it. The stage manager counted down. 5, 4, 3, 2. Andy looked into the camera, and his signature smile was back. But there was something different about it now. Something harder. Something that said he wasn't going to be pushed around. The producer walked over during the final seconds of the break. "Andy, We've been getting messages. Social media is exploding. People are completely on your side. Andy nodded, but kept his focus. Let's just get through the rest of the show. And we're back, he said, his voice warm and welcoming once again. If you're just joining us, well, you missed quite a show. But don't worry, I'm sure it'll be all over the internet in about 5 minutes. For those of you who were here, thank you for sticking with us through that unexpected detour. Now, let's get back to what we do best. The audience applauded, and Andy relaxed a bit. But his mind kept drifting back to the confrontation, to the way Meghan had looked at him with such dismissiveness, to the moment when he'd realized that no amount of professionalism on his part was going to salvage the interview. He thought about all the preparation that had gone into booking her, the weeks of back and forth with her team, the specific requests about lighting and temperature, and what kind of water she wanted. His team had bent over backwards to accommodate her, and this was how she'd repaid them. But more than anything, he thought about the crew, the young production assistants who had worked late into the night to make sure everything was perfect, the makeup artist who had patiently waited while Meghan decided she wanted different lipstick, the sound technician who had adjusted the microphones 5 times because she didn't like how they looked on camera. All of those people had done their jobs with professionalism and care, and Meghan hadn't even acknowledged them. She'd walked past them like they were furniture. And when she'd sat in that chair and started insulting the show, she'd been insulting every single person who had worked to make her appearance possible. That's what had pushed Andy over the edge. Not the insults directed at him, though those had stung, but the complete disregard for everyone else. The casual cruelty of someone who truly believed they were better than the people around them. Andy had seen a lot in his career. He'd seen diva behavior and meltdowns, and guests get drunk and say inappropriate things. But he'd never seen someone be quite so deliberately, methodically rude. And the worst part was that Meghan had seemed to enjoy it. There had been a gleam in her eye as she delivered each cutting remark, as if she was testing him, seeing how far she could push before he broke. Well, he'd broken all right, but not in the way she'd expected. He hadn't lost his temper, or screamed, or thrown things. He'd simply drawn a line and enforced it. And that had been far more effective than any outburst could have been. As the show continued, Andy found himself energized by what had happened. Yes, it had been uncomfortable, but it had also been honest. He'd shown his audience that he had boundaries, that there were things he wouldn't tolerate, no matter who was sitting across from him. During another commercial break, one of the audience members approached the stage. Andy, can I just say something? He leaned forward. Of course. What you did tonight took real courage, the woman said. I've been watching your show for years, but tonight, you showed us that grace doesn't mean being a doormat. You stood up for yourself and your team, and it was inspiring to watch. Andy felt a lump form in his throat. Thank you. That means a lot. As she returned to her seat, Andy thought about her words. She was right. It was okay to set boundaries. For too long, people in the public eye tolerated abuse because they were afraid of backlash. But tonight, he'd chosen differently. He'd chosen dignity over diplomacy, respect over ratings. The show wrapped up without any further drama. Andy said his goodbyes to the audience, thanked them for their support, and the cameras stopped rolling. His phone was already blowing up with messages. The response was overwhelmingly positive. People were praising him for handling the situation with class, for not backing down. His executive producer came over. Well, that was something, Andy laughed. That's one way to put it. You handled it perfectly, she said. You gave her every opportunity to turn things around. You were patient